Welcome, I'm Thomas, I'm a web developer, and I'm in JavaScript, CSS, and all of this. And right now, my job is to build websites, to build some smaller websites and some apps and so on. And today I want to talk about the cyberspace. You see here, we have the how you and all we are imagining the internet. We are all connected, and we are all logged into several services. And I have an Apple Watch and all of this. But sometimes the internet doesn't look like this. It looks more like this. When you're maybe you're sitting on a toilet somewhere in the countryside or so, and you want to browse the web, and you can't. There is a fancy dinosaur or something who says to you, you can't connect to the internet right now. So how to deal with this problem? And my talk today is about service workers, and I want to provide you some examples how to use service workers so your customers, which you're building your websites, have the full web experience, even when you're sitting on such a toilet somewhere in the countryside in China or whatever. Okay, and the keyword here is service worker. Whom of you already heard about service worker? Yes. Who already implemented a service worker? Also, okay. Maybe I have, for those who didn't do anything with service worker right now, it's just service worker 101, and the advanced of you, maybe you have some questions or so, so we all can improve our skills about this topic. Okay, just this. You set up the service worker, you progressive enhancement, you look if the service worker is present, and you register a new JS file. Here is the burst, beware. I always say here, beware, service workers sometimes behave strangely, and I'm here to show it's not that mess you're thinking of. You see service worker.register, and it's a new JS file, and you see it's /service worker, and the important part here is the /, so it's in the root folder of your application. And that's very important, and that's what's causing many troubles when, oh, my service worker is not running. It has, the script has to be on the root folder of your web app. So it has to be on /service worker or sw.js or whatever. So the naming is full on you, but the script has to be directly beyond the root if you want to use it in the root. When you say you want to use it in /app, it can be in /app. So that's the first pitfall here. Okay, and then you have registered your service worker. It's basically a own script that runs in its own context. So you don't have access to window object or something like this. You have only access to its own global object, like those other web workers maybe you're familiar with. So, and the service worker, maybe we do it the other way around. I think it's better. I adjusted the keynote the last time, but on the last second, but I now think that the original thing, order is better. So this is the service worker script JS. And if you just want the service worker to do nothing, it's just this script. Okay, you have 2 events, which are the most, the main event of the service worker, and that is install. So when you register the service worker, in some point in the future, the install event is fired, and you can do stuff. What stuff I explain later in this talk, but for now, just leave it right there. And then the next one is the fetch command. So every time you get an, if you program a normal site, you and you fetching an web page per GET request, and the browser is fetching the images, and so it just the browser makes a GET request to the server, and you are getting the images, you are getting the CSS files, you are getting JSON files, whatever, and right between the page and the network, you register the service worker, and the service worker, and with the fetch event, intercepts those events who are fired by the browser. And in this case, you do nothing with those intercepted fetch events. You just I think you are familiar with the new fetch implementation that should replace this old XSR, or XLR, thank you. And what you're just doing is, okay, you have the request from the browser, and you just fetch the item, the resource, as normally. So, why should we bother? We have the old implementation of those things are that I don't know if you know it, the app manifest. It's coming from the Apple side, where you can say, okay, this and this and this, I want to pre-cache and so on. And I don't want to use the network for those requests, I just want the cache for it. And the same idea you can implement with service workers. And the old app manifest implementation just looks just like this in service worker. So you see, I used on fetch method I wrote. When you can remember, it's just here the event listener fetch, and on fetch it will trigger this function. Okay, so what is a service worker all about? So we can see service worker has his, as I mentioned, has its own global scope, and in this scope we have caches where we can fill and read from the cache as we want, and that's what we can't do with the old app manifest implementation. And in this case, we open a cache that's already existing with the name I get from a constant cache name, and then I can say, okay, match those, get the matching cache item from the request URL. So this cache we are using from the service worker is basically for requests. So it's getting stored, it's a key value store, and the key is always the URL, but it can be a bit different like that. You can, it don't have to be a string, it also can be a request object when you want to be sure it has to be that right request, because you're sending some headers or so, and the headers have to match, so you can use the cache or so. Okay, in this example, okay, we are looking for the current request and its URL. We write those in a promise, and on the same time, we also are fetching this from the network. So we're doing two things at the same time, reading the cache and fetch from the network. And then the request from the network we put in the cache. And next one, okay, we are awaiting the response from the cache. And then when there is any response from the cache, so if there's nothing in the cache right now, it returns null, and we go to the else statement, and we are waiting for the fetch event. Otherwise, if there's something in the cache, we respond from the cache. And this is actually the old app manifest implementation, because when you see the then is the then closure is executed after those other things. Maybe we don't know for sure, but we are getting the old version in any case was lying in the cache. That's the standard app manifest implementation, and only on reload we are getting the new version. Yeah, and we have, and slow internet is the worst, and if you have one line, or how should you say it, when you're on your mobile phone and you see the E and you have only one of those three lines, and you try to open a web page, you have a real bad time. So you're not offline, the device thinks you're online, but you're getting 1 kilobyte every hour or so. And so you're just getting a white screen. You're in Safari or in Chrome or whatever you like, and you just get those blank white screen and nothing moves, and you're on the toilet somewhere in the countryside and you have nothing to do. You can't even read some instructions from some toilet paper, so because you're out in nowhere, yeah? And you're just sitting here for the next 30 minutes staring at the ceiling or so. Okay, here I have a small timeout function with which you can give it the duration, and after the duration it rejects. So it in the async await it throws an error. But just to keep that in mind for the next example. And so what we are wanting to do in the first step is to give our customers a unique offline message with our own logo, and maybe also a blog article or so. In the offline article, there's maybe that this offline HTML you have on your server has the current blog article, and so you can read the actual blog article. And so when you install the ServiceWorker, you're online. So you can't get on ServiceWorker if you aren't online at the moment. So you're in the city or so, and open the web page for the first time, and you install your ServiceWorker, and on install It fetches the offline HTML, which provides the content for later when you're sitting on the toilet on the countryside, so you don't get bored. And then we're getting the cache, and we put those offline HTML into the cache. So and that's the install event, and then okay, your customers don't even get that you're just dump them some offline HTML on their device, and later they are sitting on the toilet, and then yeah, you get like always the fetch. And when you're in the city, when you have internet, you see here we have a promise.raise. The fetch command is always faster than 3 seconds, because we have LTE and 5G and whatever, and those new products from Elon Musk with the satellites and so on. Yeah. And okay, 3 seconds is way too long to wait. And so the promise raise, the fetch is always faster than the timeout, which throws an error. And so we always getting the new information. But when you're on a slow internet, on edge with one of those lines, it's taking longer than those 3 seconds, and promise raise and await throws an error, and we're going to the catch statement, and we're serving the offline HTML. So and when you're talking to your to the CTO or to the marketing team, why we should implement those service workers, because everyone is in a situation where you don't have internet. And when you don't have internet, you do everything. You just scroll to the settings or so, just to get some fun or so. If, for example, if you're sitting on the toilet, oh, okay, I can adjust my alarm clock or so, and then you try to open a page, and one page works, and that's your page, and it says to you, oh, I'm sorry that you're offline, but you can read our latest blog entry. And so so when you're offline, you have an advantage about your competitors. For now, when you all implement it, we have to show. So that's the second example. And now we talked a little bit of the basics. So what ServiceWorker is all about. It incepts all network requests, and you can do stuff with it. You can incept it and get the cache if you're, for example, every time, like the app.manifest, because it's faster every time, or when you're offline also, somewhere in the countryside. But the new hot shit, if we can call it like this, is the first was mobile first. We have to be responsive and have to make the websites for mobile clients and desktop clients. And now the new wave is offline first, so that you can consume and so that you build your app and your website, that you can consume the whole content of the website, even if you're offline. And I have a small demo. We are here in Linz, we're one big loving community, and so I thought we from StahlstadtJS, we should do something for our neighbors, good friends in Technologieplauschall. And oh, that's a little bit small. And I got here, and the Technologieplauschall page is a GitHub page, and I I hope everybody is familiar with those Jamstacks and how you generate static HTML files and for the whole page instead of having a CMS or so. And I got here and thought, okay, for the StahlstadtJS, I want to do something for the long run, not just showing you that ServiceWorker and you should use it and it's easy. I thought I do something which has a greater impact. And let's start. Yeah, that's the ServiceWorker.js, and what I've done here. It's actually, and it's a little bit confusing, it's a liquid file. So it's get rendered by the liquid renderer before it's gets saved on the disk or so. And okay, I have here the cache name is Technologieplauschall cache page. And okay, here on prefetched, I got here a JSON file with all the pages I want to fetch when the visitor of Technologieplauschall is visiting Technologieplauschall for the first time. And this looks like this. Okay, I want the archive page, I want the community news, I want the stats, I want the FAQs, I want the history, and I want all the Plauschall that they are stored locally on everyone who's using Technologieplauschall, who's visited Technologieplauschall even once. And you got those JSON, and I put it here, so it looks a little bit weird, but it works. And when you install the new ServiceWorker, the old cache gets deleted, so that the new iterations of Technologieplauschall and so are written to the local cache of the user, and then you can say not just put one in the cache, sondern put all, that's an array, and I can say add all, and this add all makes the fetch and stores this into the cache. So every Technologieplauschall page is getting stored into the cache, and also the CSS and font informations. So every time you're offline and you're on the toilet somewhere in the countryside, you can scroll to all the Technologieplauschals and yeah. And how is it made? Okay, it's combined the examples from before. I open the cache and I first I say, okay, I didn't found anything, so I get a 404 response, and then after that I try, and here are the next exclamation mark is about those request.clone. A request you can only consume once. So when you say, okay, please, dear cache, give me the one page from the cache, the request is getting consumed, and you can't use the same cache for the request for some other kind of stuff. For example, here I'm using it for the request.fetch. Okay, maybe there are some improvements here. No, yeah, and in the case of a cache, I use it the second time. So the best practice is to always clone it, because you'll never be sure if in some point in time you want to use the request again for some other stuff. So when you're online, it just behaves as normally. The fetch happens, and it's faster than 3 seconds, and so it's getting fulfilled, and then it's also written the new version in the cache, and so it's only once at the install of the and always when you fetch it, it gets the new version. Maybe there's some typos or so which are corrected. So, and then finally return me the response. And on the other hand, if the timeout, if the network is slower than 3 seconds, we are looking for the response, and if there is any response, finally we return the response also. Yeah, and I thought it would be funny if we can, as a community, can write the commit message all together. So we have maybe what I also have to explain. So is here in footer, or every time the content is loaded, we are setting up the service worker, and okay, there is more. Wait, there is more. We don't only have internal links on our website. When we are on Technologieplauschall, you can see on the side, okay, there is this menu on the right with home and the archive of the last Plauschalls and the community news and Slack and Slack sign-up form. So, but the Slack sign-up form is not an internal link. And when you're on the toilet in the countryside, we have to show you somehow you can click this link, because Slack is not that awesome than Technologieplauschall.at. And also you can click the Facebook link, you can click the Meetup link, but you can click, of course, the Technologieplauschall link, and there is no picture for Technologieplauschall 60. And so we have to tell the browser, please hide those elements. And what we are doing here, that the first is update the anchor tags, the A tags, and we have our prefetched JSON, our file where every page is listed, we can access offline. And we included also here, that's the same code we have in our ServiceWorker JS, where we get the JSON, and then we get all anchor tags, and then we iterate those anchor tags. And if we find the destination of those anchor tags in this prefetched JSON, we adding a data attribute with prefetched yes, and if we don't find it, we set an attribute with prefetched no. And then the next one, we are doing event listeners for if you're online or offline. I don't know if you know that, but you can, a web page knows when a device loses internet connection and regains internet connection. And we can do something about this. For example, in this case, we're in both cases using update online status. And on update online status, on the body tag, we're adding or removing a class which says offline. And when we have a look in the offline SCSS, I set the opacity to 50% if the attribute prefetched is set to no. And what this does is, if we're going offline here, and yeah, so that's technology. Yeah, yeah, but I also run it on localhost, of course, the version with the ServiceWorker. And if we go offline here, yeah, the Slack goes opacity to 50%. Maybe there's some designers who are thinking of a better way, but not just setting the opacity. I don't want to display none because it's counterintuitive. Because you're in the city and you have internet and you see the mean of Facebook zeigen and Meetup and so on, and the Slack button, and then you're on the toilet and you don't see them and you're confused, and why don't I see those buttons? Yeah. So we have to think about new ways we can handle those links we cannot use while we're offline. Yeah, and when we're online again, the buttons are getting to opacity 100%. And so we're using this offline events and the ServiceWorker to create a full offline experience. And so, and the wonderful thing about this is you don't have to be, for example, Technologieplauschall 13 or so. You've never been on those page, Technologieplauschall 13, but with those prefetch, you already have it in your cache. And you click on a link you've never been before, but it's prefetched in the cache, and you can access this link. And so the people can inform themselves about the Technologieplauschall, where other pages are still completely broken. So, and now I need, I check in everything but the gem files. Yeah, and I need a commit message. What do we write the guys from Technologieplauschall? What's the convention? What's from Stahl? From Stahl. So. Don't forget the receipt. Fußschi und Hashtag Karriere. Yeah, come on. I think that's enough. Is there extra points for that? Yeah. So, and then I think it's the first time someone actually mentioned Git pull request live on stage. So we go Git push. I hope this works. Yes. Okay, and then we go to GitHub. How do I make a pull request? Can somebody help me? Where? That? What? Here. Okay. And here I say create a pull request. Yeah, and then I say just watch the StahlstadtJS stream on YouTube for instructions. So, and here we go. The first Git live on stage. Yeah, and then we go back. And now I'm talking about the life cycle of the service worker. So you install the service worker once, and it gets activated. And so, and service worker are a little bit complicated in this manner because you installed first service worker, and it's one service worker for all open pages. So when you go to Technologieplauschal.at for the first time, when the pull request gets committed or how accepted, when the pull request gets accepted, you got installed the first service worker, and then this service worker stays active as long as you have one page open from Technologieplauschal. So when you have multiple tabs or even multiple windows from the same server, the service worker is still running. And when you're debugging and want to try to install a new service worker, the install event gets fired, but not sorry, the service worker doesn't get activated right now, right from this moment, but only if you close the browser and reopen it again. So when you're closing the browser, all service worker are getting terminated, and when you reopen the browser, you get the new installed service worker in the active state. There are dev tools for Chrome and for Safari and also Firefox, where you can do this manually without restarting the browser. But to keep in mind for your clients, they only get the new service worker if they close the browser and reopen the browser again. And so sometimes service worker gets stuck because of those that the web browser never gets terminated and so on. And so you have to be careful here. And so yeah, that's about that. And okay, can we actually use service worker? And the answer is yes. Every major browser has implemented service workers and has implemented service workers to this extent that we all, what we learned today at the Technologieplauschal works in Edge, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, and also in iOS Safari. If you have installed 11.4 or 12. Here, exclamation mark, beware of iOS. If you're open a page with a service worker from an app view, for example, Facebook or so, it's getting its own service worker. And when you open it from Safari, it's getting its own service worker. So you have two service workers which can't communicate from the same page, and when Facebook never kills its web view from your site, the service worker, this old service worker, will stay in Facebook app view forever. So it's a little bit of a mess in iOS, but it works, and I'm excited about that. And yeah, and also a major takeaway from this all is ActionScript 2017. It's a little bit of a joke that the last time I made a presentation here, I got ActionScript and JavaScript confused, and it was a little bit awkward. And so when I make a joke about it, it's getting better. So when you look at the implementation of service worker and the implementation of all those ECMAScript 2015, 16, and 17 features, you can use in the slash ServiceWorker.js all those new features. So if a browser can use ServiceWorker, you can use async await and those other great stuff. So you don't have to implement the fallback or something like that. You can use those new feature right out of the box. So, and to close my talk, here are two ServiceWorker implementations if you don't want to do it yourself. The first one is up. It's basically this offline HTML stuff, which from the second example, where I can say, okay, dear up, that's my offline HTML. Please serve it when I'm offline. And that's all, and then you don't have to think about this whole ServiceWorker infrastructure. And the second one, I don't like Google that much, so I don't use it by myself. Those examples look a little bit nicer with those ServiceWorker toolbox. And also from the ServiceWorker toolbox, when you're talking to your marketing people, you get offline analytics. So the ServiceWorker toolbox implements Google Analytics, and it caches the Google Analytics data. And when your customer gets online the next time, it gets pushed the offline data to the server. So yeah, that's the two implementations of ServiceWorker, and that's the talk. And if you have any questions, it's the right time, or you can also, you saw my Twitter handle. I think I have to put a slide about myself the next time. But yeah, I'm here. You can drink a beer with me.
So at the moment, if the internet connection is bad, only the offline version is loaded, right? So the online version doesn't slowly load in the background because the internet is only slowly.
Yeah, that's an improvement you can make.
But is that possible?
Yeah, it's JavaScript. You can implement it yourself. In this case, how I implemented it's a race condition. So if the one fails, the try block is over, and you go to the catch block. But you can say, okay, I don't use it that way. I got here and do the fetch outside of it. Let's say let fetch promise response promise. And yeah, and okay, yeah, I have to do it outside of the try block, of course, and then I can say, okay, finally, or even after the finally, so store it into the, yeah, it's open to you and you can improve it, and so yeah.
Great, thank you very much. A big hand of applause. I think we can have another conversation about this with a drink, maybe at the bar. Christoph will show us the way out once he wants to shut down the place. So be nice to Christoph. Yeah, thank you very much for coming, Thomas.